Hey there, and welcome to the Total Potential Podcast. It's Cole, and I'm just so excited to be here with you today with our guest, Ken Wimberly. Ken, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So, Ken has a really super interesting background and some just strong pulls to entrepreneurship that have led to some interesting endeavors. I can't wait to kind of dive into your journey with that. Um, but the way I found out about Ken was because he has a really amazing product for people like us, people with families who want to record and remember and highlight the memories, called the Legacy Journal app. And so we'll have a little bit of a chance to talk about ways that kind of captures, what this whole journey is like along the way as well. But Ken, before we dive into where you are now, I'm interested to kind of know a little bit more about your background and some of the more formative events in your life that have kind of paved the way.
Yeah. Wow. As you use the word formative events or the words formative events. So let me go way back. So my parents divorced when I was 3 years old, and it's the first memory of my life. So you talk about early formative events. Literally, that's the first memory of my life, is sitting on my dad's lap and him telling me that with my mom there, that they were getting divorced. And so I was raised mostly by my mom. Back then, this is early 70s. Yeah, typical custody arrangement. You go live with your mom, and I saw my dad every other week on the weekends is when I would see him, and then a week in the summer, a week or two during the summer. And so that was how I grew up, raised by my mom, who was a wonderful, loving mother and an alcoholic. And so raised in an alcoholic household with not a ton of supervision, because she would kind of go out and hang out with friends as much as she would be with family, with us and my sister and I. So because of kind of that environment, inside I was seeking something. I didn't know what I was seeking, but I was seeking something as I was growing up. And at when I was 12 years old, maybe 11 is when I watched it. I saw the movie Taps, Tom Cruise's first movie, actually. And after watching that movie, I went to my mom and said, I want to go to military school. And so 6 months later, I was at Kemper Military School in Boonville, Missouri at age 12. And so
wow,
I spent the next 4 years of my life basically at boarding school at Kemper Military. So I'd come home for holidays and summers. But other than that, I was in a very structured, very disciplined, very different environment. And that, formative, that shaped my world right there. But I needed that. I needed the discipline. I needed the structure. I wanted it. I wanted the accountability. And that really set me on, the path that I eventually became much, much more of. But anyway, graduated from there, went to college. So interesting. I will tell you interesting something. I graduated a year early as valedictorian. So I was 16 years old. I graduated as valedictorian.
Oh my goodness.
which my kids love to point out. Yeah, Dad, you had a class of 50. Real impressive. But I was number one of 50. So
hey.
So graduated and then went to Texas A&M for my first semester and made a 1.2 in college. So it was very humbling to go from you're number one, you're great, to you failed out, you're gone. But that was, I'd met a girl over the summer and I didn't know anyone because I just turned 17 when I went to college. All my friends were still in high school. And so, but the combination of, met a girl coming back home and didn't know anyone, ended up in a pretty and hard classes. A&M had some real tough weed out classes, but all that ended up in a big fail out. But anyway, went to community college, ended up at TCU, Texas Christian in Fort Worth. In the middle of my first year at TCU, U.S. went to war with Iraq in Gulf War I. And so I went down and enlisted in the Navy. Said, look, there's something bigger and better that I need to be doing than sitting on a couch watching TV and watching this war. So I went down and enlisted in the Navy, served a tour in the Navy, got out, finished my career at TCU, and then started into the working world. And working world started for me in insurance and investments. I was a finance guy. I'm a spreadsheet junkie. And so that path worked out fine for me at the moment. I actually got my degree in real estate or finance with a real estate concentration. So I wanted to get into real estate, but at the time, couldn't find anyone to hire me. So I ended up, sticking with the firm where I was interning at in college. And then the entrepreneurial bug struck me, and I opened up my first restaurant, or my first, I went to my first entrepreneurial venture, which was opening up a restaurant. And it one that I'd worked at in college is a pizza restaurant. And actually one of my Navy buddies and I had opened that up, and we were certain we were going to have a home run. We were going to open up 5 of these restaurants, and then we were going to help the people that had founded that restaurant to franchise it. And we were going to build this big, massive enterprise. And 18 months later, we filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was a humbling experience. What I've learned through that, looking back over the years, is, boy, I was full of hubris, full of, I got it. I don't need anyone. I got this figured out. I didn't know the first thing about like mentor networks, or like my friend later opened up a restaurant. And he was a part of these restaurateurs that got together and shared best practices, et cetera. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. And we just like, oh, we've got it. And we didn't have it. So that was a humbling experience. And just to go and rebuild from that, it was a big deal. And it took a while, but we kind of got back on our feet, or back on my feet, and entered the real estate business. And I spent the next 20 years in the commercial real estate business, kind of building a pretty sizable career in that business. Did well, with a hiccup in 0809. That was a shellacking for a lot of folks in the real estate business, me included. Ended up through that period, and we had a short sale of our house. I got divorced. Just a really rough, low spot. Luckily, didn't end up in bankruptcy again, but it did. I ended up with a lot of debt and a lot of issues right there. And then eventually climbed out of that. I, after the divorce, met Amber, started dating, who's now my wife and mother of my 5-year-old, and our 5-year-old, and my soulmate. And so started dating Amber. Things started getting on track, and Amber and I, as we were engaged, we said, hey, we should kind of look at to do a little inventory of our financial picture. There's actually a result someone had given us, the Total Money Makeover book. And so I was reading that, I was like, oh, we need to do a little inventory, and realize we had $350,000 in debt between the two of us.
Yeah.
A lot of it was mine. She had a lot of the little nitpicky things, but the big stuff was mine. And so we went on the Dave Ramsey debt snowball plan for 2 years. And at that same time, we're really pouring into business and scaling up the real estate business. And so 24 months later, we paid off $350,000 of debt. And so that was all of these are the kind of the formative moments of my life as we go on. And then from there, continue to build the real estate business. That opened up other doors. I ended up becoming a Keller Williams franchisee. Started investing in different types of real estate, both as a sponsor and just in other people's deals right there, and started kind of building my wealth, building my net worth right there. And then eventually some bandwidth freed up in my real estate world. We separated from some team members right there and just got rid of some responsibilities. And it allowed me to do 2 different things that are really the 2 primary focuses of my world today. And one is Laundry Love. We opened up our first of what is becoming a chain of laundromats. We are mission-centered laundromats. We believe that our operation can change lives. And so we're wanting to be like a community center in the areas where we operate. We have a dedicated children's play area in our laundromats. We have a children's reading literacy area where we bring in books every month and encourage the kids to take them home. Because what we realized as we were investigating that world is that there is a real issue in childhood literacy in impoverished areas, which is typically where these laundromats will go. Sure. So we're helping to make a little bit of a dent in that. And then on our TVs, we have like 6 or 8 big screen TVs in our stores, and each one of them shows only positive programming. So no daytime TV, no news, no negativity and junk on the TV. So it's DIY, it's sports channels, it's home and garden TV, that kind of thing, just positive stuff on there. So, or Disney Channel for the kids. So anyway, that's one. And then the other, at the same time where I started this, was what you mentioned, which is Legacy Journal. So we launched Legacy of Love, Inc. A few years back and created Legacy Journal. And now we've got, thousands of parents from 58 countries around the world that are, slowing down and capturing moments and memories and lessons and things that they want to just remember so that they can one day pass that down to their children or grandchildren. And it's really cool. They're putting videos and photos and audio files, and it's a beautiful thing that is really, I think that's probably going to be my biggest impact in the world, is what I'm able to give back with Legacy Journal, because it's making such a difference in the parents that are using it. They contact me all the time. I get emails, I get letters, I get phone calls saying, you have no idea what this has done for me and my family, because it's just making more present, and it's relieving, frankly, a sense of guilt that I didn't know I had, about not having something there to, to remember everything that happened, or if I'm gone, to leave behind for my children. And I share with you, my mother passed this past year. And the most valuable thing that I came across in all of her possessions were a handful of letters. And the letters were written actually to her from her brother about my grandparents, about her parents, my grandparents. And, those, I have chills thinking about it right now, but those were the most valuable possession of everything. That is just the letters that he wrote about growing up with, my grandparents that I knew them as grandparents, but I didn't know them with this other perspective that he was sharing in the letters. So that's my story.
Wow. I mean, first of all, thank you very much for your service. I'm so interested to know, between that military boarding experience and then a gap where you're like in civilian life, going to school, and then back in the military, what would you say are like some of the biggest life lessons you took from that phase and that experience that you've been, because I mean, you've had these really successful adventures and taken some risks, right? Like, not everyone starts a business, not everyone creates a product or a new offering, and it takes like some courage to do that. Are there parts of that experience that formed you in a way that has created a platform for that?
The in between was me kind of just bouncing around, trying to, I've had a lot of years of trying to find myself. I really feel very grounded in who I am today. I know but I'm 50. It took me until I was 40 to understand that. And so in those years between, let's say 17, I mean, honestly, it was just, I graduated military school at 16. I went into the Navy at 19. And so there were 3 years in between there where I was in college and just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, what I was going to do in there, and learning a few things and making new friends. I actually had an appointment out of Kemper to the Citadel, to one of the military academies at the Citadel. And I had a senatorial, you have, in order to do that, you got a letter from a senator, recommendations. And I had an appointment to go to that institution. But at the time I was like, I've been in military for 4 years. I wanted this as an option, but I want to go meet girls. And I want to go meet girls and hang out and do the college thing. And so, I think in that short period, it was just me, getting to be a little bit of a kid, a little bit, because I came from so much structure, or I put myself in so much structure, and getting to kind of just figure out a little bit of who I was and meet people and do the college thing for a while.
Yeah. And then this sort of like entrepreneurial spirit, like, do you recall having that as a young person, or you got into the working world and were like, oh, wow, I have a pull toward kind of like this unknown space, this possibility? Like, how did you step into that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'll hear people that are like, oh yeah, I was, door to door selling newspapers as a 5-year-old, or I was doing this. That was not me early on. It wasn't my example. It wasn't me. However, I will say my example early on was my grandfather. He had started a steel erection business, and built a very, very large business and very successful business. And so I always kind of looked up to him as the entrepreneur that had his own company, built something kind of big right there. But it wasn't me early on. But I would have ideas. I would have product ideas all the time. I would kind of think through these but wouldn't execute on them. I'm a real big fan of action and execution these days, but I would have these ideas and would not execute on them, but I would think through them. And then, when the pizza restaurant thing came along, it was something that I loved the product. I genuinely really loved that product, and felt like, because it was run pretty poorly from the guy that ran that location. And I really did feel like we could improve dramatically upon, and we could have, had we involved mentors, we involved coaches, we had done some things that helped keep us accountable and in line right there. I think we could have really done something special. However, I look back on that and I'd still be in the real estate business, or rather in the restaurant business, which I did not want to be in long term. So things work out for a reason. But yeah, so I started to feel that entrepreneurial bug after college, and really maybe even in the Navy, because in the Navy, I realized that, hey, I'm in a situation right here where I can, especially as an enlisted man, I cannot move forward more rapidly than the pay advancement scales will allow. You can't just go from E5 to E8 and jump up like that. In business, you can scale really fast if you do things right. And so I wanted the ability to kind of get out and go prove myself and be able to advance as fast as my abilities would provide. And so it's kind of one of the reasons I got out of the Navy after a tour. I wanted to be able to go and prove myself to myself and to others, and be rewarded for my behavior.
Yeah. And then after sort of the success that you've experienced in that entrepreneurial space and with real estate, what kind of like flipped the switch for you to have a new calling or a new why or a new pull to something totally different?
So you used the word a new why, and that was one of the big things that flipped the switch for me, is when I discovered my purpose and my why. And until 2010, so I think 2010, I am 39 years old, I had never even heard the concept of having a purpose in your life. Never heard of it, and it had never been mentioned to me. And I heard Gary Keller up on stage one day talking about this concept of a big why and something greater than you that's pulling you forward, that will get you through these downtrodden times when you're inevitable to be there and to get beat down and to have things that don't work your way. But, one of the things that will kind of pull you up is having a calling bigger than yourself, a mission bigger in your life. And so it took me 2 years, from 2010 to 2012, to figure that out. And yeah, I imagined it would be something related to my kids. I'm like, my kids are super important to me, but it just to say my kids are my why didn't sound really thought through. And so I did think through a lot. And what I settled down, and still today is my kind of purpose, is to be the best possible example I can for my wife and my children and to others who may look to me for inspiration. Because what I started realizing is there's people watching me that I don't even know that are out there. And people would come tell me stories. Hey, I saw you do this and that really mattered. And you mentioned this and I'm making changes in my life. I was like, okay, well, I want to be the best version of myself possible, to be a great influence for certainly my wife and children first, and then others, but in all aspects of my life. It's, it's love and benevolence and generosity and charity and business and finance and personal development, action, adventure, all of these aspects is what I want to be the best version of myself. And in 2012, that was very aspirational. I was still not quite living like that, but I can tell you in the 9 years, almost 10 years since then, I've really started living in alignment with that vision of myself. And so that's one of the things that guided me. So as my, I was doing the real estate thing, and parts of that were great. As parts of it I still love. I love investing in real estate. But there were parts of it that I wasn't loving. And so I wanted something that was fulfilling to me. And I had been, journaling to my children since Grace was 1. She's a freshman in college now. And Knox, who's a senior in high school, he was in the womb when I started journaling to him. And so I had been doing that and sharing that idea with parents, and parents had started doing it on themselves. And for years, people had been saying, Ken, you should do something with that. Ken, you should do something. And, I said, maybe I should do something with that, and when that bandwidth freed up, I said, look, if I could do something with this, that would be living really in alignment with my purpose. What makes me, and being a dad is my favorite thing in the world to do. Hands down, being a dad. And so this allows me to be a dad, help other parents connect with their children, with their families, and to scale a very big business, and to help a whole lot of people around the world.
Yeah. The pull to family like resonates really deeply. And I know the audience can't see this, but Ken's face like really lit up, even just saying, just the word family, and what a pull that is. And so that really rings true for us as well. I'm interested to know, in that period from 2010 to 2012, like what were some of the practices, or like how did you start to dig into what is my purpose? Because this is something we get a lot, right? That purpose feels really big. It feels like something no one's ever been exposed to before. We didn't learn about it in school, or have a lesson on it in class. And it feels like for many, oh, wow, well, now I have this thing I have to figure out, and it has to be so important because it's the purpose of my life, right? And it can feel really overwhelming. So what were some of the ways that you started to even like peel back the layers on that?
Yeah. Number one, I started seeking out other people who had found their purpose, who felt like they knew what their purpose was, and asking, hey, what is it? How'd you asking, how'd you come up with it? And, for most people, it was just a lot of, honestly, just a lot of kind of quiet soul searching time, just thinking through. That's why it took me 2 years. It's not like I just came up with this in, 30 days. It took me 2 years to figure this out. And, a little of it was just, there's a great book called The Alchemist.
Yes.
I don't know if you've read
It's one of my favorite books.
In The Alchemist, it talks about omens and signs and things, right? So you look for for me, I was looking for the omens, looking for the signs that were kind of pointing me in that direction. And is being an example, and like, okay, from old Army and Navy, they talk about leadership by example. And so example was always an important thing for me. And so that just started kind of manifesting, come together. Certainly family was the most important thing. And then some things happened where people would, I'll teach classes here and there sometimes and share things with people. And, I think a lady came up to me one time, and this is during that same time frame. And this is how I realized that people were paying attention to me, that I didn't maybe think they were paying attention. Mm-hmm. And I had taught a class about and shared a weight loss journey that I had gone on, and I'd lost 50 pounds in about 6 months. And a lady came up to me a year later, I taught the same class back to back in a year later. And she said, hey, I took this class a year ago and you saved my life. I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, I've lost 100 pounds in the last year. And she said, because I listened to your story and it resonated so much with me that I went out and took action, and I started my own journey, and I'm still on it, but I've lost 100 pounds already. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so little things like that were showing up in my life. Like, wow, people are really paying attention when you don't necessarily think, or you maybe have no idea that they are. And so all those things came together to help me come up with, and it's a little bit of a living document, the big why, because I put action and adventure on there just in the past, probably 2 years. That's the most recent time I've updated, because I do some crazy, hard, fun things. And so there's kind of adventurous in action. And so I push myself really hard, and I want that to be part of the example I'm leaving.
Yeah, I love that. I have so many questions right now, but I'm so curious, because when I think about both for my brother and I, like an intimate part of the experience of coming in contact with real deep, meaningful purpose has been like that foundational aspect of physical wellness, and how there's just like the energy is more clear, your head is more clear, you can see things more clearly. Like, what has your experience been around sort of that fitness wellness journey that you've had in parallel to this finding purpose journey?
We're so aligned in thought on this. And I love the work that y'all are doing in helping people in that journey, because it is so important. And it's weird because right now you almost get shamed if you talk about being fit and being aware. It's where there's been a pendulum swing in things right now. But I love the work that you do. So for me, it was huge. So I woke up one morning. Now, here's exactly how I did. I didn't wake up. I got a wake up call. I was walking. Amber and I were, this was in that exactly the 2012 timeframe. I'd just kind of been defining my purpose. We were kind of making this commitment with Dave Ramsey, and or starting to think through that. This is right before we started all this. And I'm walking across the living room. We're living in this little tiny apartment, and my 8-year-old son was sitting on the couch. And he looked at me and said, "Hey, Dad." I walk across, I don't have a shirt on. He said, "Hey, Dad." He said, "Man, your chest and your arms, they're looking pretty good." I was like, puffed up there. I'm like, "Well, heck yeah, they are. I do some push-ups around here." And then he looked down and he goes, "Your belly? Not so much." And I was like, "You little son of a gun." But that comment was the wake-up call, because for the first time in several years, I kind of really looked at myself in the mirror and in the shower, and I'm like, whoa, who have you become? I went to military school. I was in the Navy. I've been a pretty fit guy through most of my life. And here I weighed over 200 pounds. I was probably pushing 205, 210. In there, to put in perspective today, I weigh just over 160 pounds. And so I was looking at myself, I'm like, wow, who is this guy in the mirror? Who have you become? And so that comment put me on a journey. And so that during this time we were going through the Dave Ramsey thing, I also went through this fitness thing, and I also went through the scale my business thing. So I had 3 things that I was committed to do at that time. And the physical fitness part of it, that just being well and feeling, it gives me this great feeling internally that I'm just who I should be. I'm doing what I should do. I'm being the true best version of myself. And that what started there, I mean, that's led me through a bunch of, or let's just say a long journey that continues today. And so now in 2018, December 2018, so you know who Kevin Hart is?
Yeah.
Right. He's amazing. And Kevin had done this Nike video, which was, it's one of my favorite things to watch. I play it in my classes that I teach. And, but the Nike video is just him just relentlessly working out and trying to be the best version of himself, because he's out there in front on stage for people. And he said he owes it to his audience to show up as the best version of himself. I start thinking, well, we all owe it to show up as the best version of ourselves to the people we serve, to our families, to ourselves. And he made a comment in there on this video, and it was something about 365 days a year, no days off. And I was like, whoa, that's powerful. And so in December of 2018, I made a commitment. I said, I'm going to work out every single day in 2019. And I started a couple of weeks into 2018 and to get me going. And I said, here's how I'm going to do it. I have to set up systems for myself to make it easy. If I can follow a plan, and this is most of us, right? If you have to overthink it, that's when we choose not to do something, because it's too much mental energy. But if you can set up a system and a plan and just work that plan, it's so much easier. And I frankly still believe today that no days off is easier than 5 days a week. It's
totally agree with that.
It's so much easier.
Is it Tuesday off? Is it Sunday off? Maybe it's both. Now it's Wednesday. Days is easier to follow.
It's so easy to, even if so today, some of my days, it may just, I'll go walk 2 miles, but I'll get out there and I'll go walk 2 miles and it's there. But so my plan for 2019, I committed to 400 reps a day starting in January. And it could be anything, push-ups, squats, lunges, dips, pull-ups, varieties of abs, jumping jacks, and burpees. Okay. Any combination within there, 400 reps. And then, I had a little spreadsheet to track it. And I still have the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then in February, I'd go to 500, in March to 600, all the way until I was at 1,500 reps a day in December.
Wow.
And I followed that plan and I executed it. And it was an amazing experience. And I did that just to prove to myself and to be the example to others that it's very possible and very doable. And so then, long story short, after that, I was like, well, I can't quit now. So I've kept working out every day for, I don't know, it's over like 1,100 days now. So.
Oh my gosh, I love that story so much. First of all, I love that. And this is something I want to talk more about, but how just like our children they don't mess with the truth. They just say what they mean to say, and how that really like started a whole journey for you is remarkable.
Bless the kids for that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Um, and like just the commitment that it really does take over 1100 days to see something through, but who you get to become because of that.
That's the real benefit, is who you manifest into. And you, certainly there are physical benefits, right?
Yes.
You're stronger, you look good. But then just the biggest thing is just the mental, because I believe it gives me the edge over so many people. It's like, I know that Will Smith made a comment one time. He said, if you and I get on a treadmill next to each other, I'm going to win, because I'm going to go until I either win or I die and I fall off of this machine. And I feel similar to that. I'm like, I know, because it's proven to myself that I can commit to something and follow through with it. And I think that's where so many of us, and I, for years, was this person. I would say I was going to do something, and I would start it, and I'd have the best of intentions and then get derailed.
Yeah.
And this was an effort to prove to myself that no, you can do it and not get derailed. And now that's shown up in so many other aspects of my life.
Yeah. And it's amazing how we can use that physical avenue to learn and experience lessons that impact every other area of our life. That's one of the reasons I love the physical space so much. I also appreciate the aspect that you're mentioning around like the example of just doing something hard, because I think I won't speak for Jake, my brother, but he really struggles with how like soft in so many ways we've become, that we want the easier path. We want the delivery. We want the remote that does the thing. We want it's our existence, even though we complain about, what's going on in the world, our existence is getting easier and easier and easier, especially from a physical standpoint.
Yes.
And so that the opportunity to manufacture a little bit of challenge as an example, not only for ourselves, but for our children, for the people who are paying attention and, living by that example, how powerful that is to just like choose the kind of hard thing and see it through. What is your take on that though?
Okay. Now we're really starting to speak my language. So there is an incredible book by Tom Shea called Unbreakable. It's THOM, Shea, SHEA, called Unbreakable. He is a retired Navy SEAL, and he wrote the outline for this book as a memoir to his children, thinking that he would not return from battle. And it is anyway, it's an amazing book, funny, great. There's all kinds of stuff in it, but one of the things he talks about in that book is the doing something hard, and what he suggested to his children, that doing something hard was to go walk for 24 hours straight. And that to me just sounded easy, to be honest. I mean, I've exercised for all these days in a row, and that didn't sound hard until I did it.
I was guessing that was coming, but I didn't know for sure.
2 years ago, my buddy, sitting on the couch, and he texted me, this is in mid-April, texted me and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing like a 24-hour walk. And I'm thinking, okay, that's dumb. And then he sent me, because again, it just sounded easy and kind of boring and not very fun to me. And then he sent me a video of some guys that had completed it. And I was like, I'm in. And it's like, I'm in. And so then he texts me back, says, hey, let's do it before it gets too hot. How about in 2 weeks? And so 2 weeks later, I think it was May 1st, we set out at 8:00 in the morning, just the two of us. And actually, there was a third guy that did the first 8 hours with us. And we set out to walk for 24 hours. And first 8 hours were a blast. I mean, it was just fun, chatting, hanging out. And the next 4 hours were still not too bad to get into that 12-hour mark. So then it's 8:00 at night, you down in our headlights. It's a little fun from there. But then it gets dark, and then you just keep walking through everything. And we had mapped out the path we were going to take, and it was 3 loops of this path. And by 16 hours in, it was excruciating. Wait, I forgot. Because we are, what is it, a sadist or a masochist when you do stuff to yourself? Well, whatever that is, because we're that, we decided to do 42 push-ups at the top of each hour so that we could have 1,000 push-ups knocked out by the end of the time. So just to level it up a little bit. So anyway, by 16 hours in, it was absolutely excruciating. Every step felt like we were walking on hot coals, and just to get down and up for the push-ups was so hard to do. Like, doing the push-ups wasn't near as bad as the getting up and down for them. And we had 8 hours to go. I mean, it's 8 freaking hours to go when you're in so much pain already. And we kept pushing on. And another thing we had done through this, which really helped, we made a commitment to, at the top of each hour after the push-ups, we would say something we're grateful for. And so I really think that helped just mentally. And then for a couple of hours, we just kind of separated a little bit, and we were just talking to ourselves in our heads and mantras. And I kept telling myself, I'm like, you know what? You knew somewhere there would be pain that showed up, and you wanted it, because I did. I didn't want it to be easy, right? I wanted, it's like you wanted the pain to show up. You wanted the challenge. Well, big boy, here it is. Like, here it is. So keep putting one foot in front of the other and honor your word. And so we continued to do that. And we finished at 8 a.m. the next morning, and we literally hobbled across the finish line, and then did our last 42 push-ups for 1,000 right there. It's crazy.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So there's doing something hard.
Yeah, doing something hard. And you know what? Just embracing it, because Jake and I have this conversation a lot, because actually for some people who pursue like grit and grind all the time, they actually need to pursue some of the softer things, right? Because that's actually where the challenge is. That's where the learning is. But for many of us, walking toward the challenge means going towards something hard, physically hard for the brain to learn, like whatever that hard thing is. But like everything that we need is just sitting right there waiting for us. Like, oh, hey, I've been looking for you, and here I am. Like, now you get to see me. Now you get to know what this aspect is. Like, there's so many things that arise from that. And so, I mean, just kudos, like, to really going to that and going to that place and embracing those types of challenges. That's really an amazing example.
There's so much that comes out of it. You know, so many breakthroughs mentally to make for me. And the same thing. Now it's one more thing to say, okay, I know I can make it through in business, right? I mean, sometimes like our legs get cut out from underneath us in things, and it's hard. That's a whole other hard. And but you know, eventually you'll know you're going to get through it. You're going to figure it out. You're resourceful, and you're willing to go through and do the hard work that's required. So
yeah, no, it absolutely applies to every area.
And parenting
of life.
too.
Yeah,
Parenting,
I was just going to say, I'm so interested to know from that parenting perspective, 2 parts. Number one, how, because this is a journey that you already had children that were what you said about 8 years old or so when you like in 2010. Did I have that?
Yeah. So
right?
in 20, so they were born in 2002 and 2004.
Okay.
And so when Amber and I kind of got together, they were whatever, 8, 9 years old.
Yeah.
And so maybe 10 years old right there. But it, you know, so we've had the journey of raising them through a blended family relationship and as a co-parent. My ex-wife and I and Amber are all 3 friends now, and we do a very, I think, a pretty solid job of co-parenting. But there's been that journey, and then Amber and I now have a 5.5-year-old too. So I'm in the midst of the entire parenting thing.
Yeah, no doubt. What changes or what have you noticed, like being on this journey yourself? How has that shaped or changed your experience with the kids in a family?
A huge amount, because until this 2012 timeframe where I find my, I mean, I talk about prior to that is kind of living on autopilot and just going through the motions. I mean, I got married for the wrong reasons initially and doing what I thought I was supposed to do or I should do. And I mean, thank God I did, because I have knocks and grace out of that, and it's a beautiful thing. And but just I was not living a happy life. I was not living a good life. Maybe externally it looked good, but internally it was not. And, so it's, I feel like even early on, I was a very loving father. And I mean, obviously I started journaling to my kids during that time and doing that, but I wasn't being true to myself. I wasn't being near as good of a dad as I could be. So my personal journey with myself, I think, is maybe a much, much more involved, more attentive, better father, certainly better husband. And part of that journey is that we've done family masterminds. We've done exploration together as husband and wife, as dad and kids. Started following the family board meeting, Jim Shields kind of concept a number of years ago. And the journey, I think, has helped immensely in my role as a father. And boy, I got to tell you, that's needed, because having teenage kids gets a challenge. For someone told my ex and I a long time ago, they said, yeah, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. And there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. Problems that have a lot more implications when they're big. Yeah.
For sure.
I'm so interested. So to kind of circle back to the comment that your son made that really set you on like this whole new trajectory. When you think about the legacy journal, and like in that moment, I'm hearing you learning from your son. Your son makes the comment, you have an aha moment, and you're learning something from him, which I like is such a beautiful part of being a parent. Like we think we're the teachers, but they're really teaching us. In the legacy journal, what is your experience with how our kids can teach us, like the lessons that they're providing? How is that? My sense is like it's suddenly maybe right there, more obvious, like that we see it with our eyes a different way. I don't know.
See, now you see a big smile on my face, because this is such the power of slowing down and writing some things down, because it's awareness. If you just have a little bit of awareness into what's happening right in front of us, which again, for years, I didn't have all that awareness, but some, and just slowing down and say, okay, so I've written in their journals, good times, bad times, journaling through divorce and what happened and how I owned that and how the different components of that. As a parent, sometimes you make decisions that, oftentimes you make decisions that your children don't agree with. And when they're little, like our 5-year-old, he doesn't agree. Well, sure, there's reasons, but when they're 12, 13, 14, 15, and they don't agree, they've got well-informed opinions on their own. And so certainly we communicate a lot. I think communication is the key ingredient in any relationship, and certainly in a parenting relationship. But even when you communicate, sometimes you communicate and you're butting heads a little bit. And so I think to use this power and the time to go slow down and just write things out, write out your feelings. That's what I do anyway. I write out, look, here's this decision I made. I don't know if it's right. There's no, guidebook to tell me if this is really there. And every person's different, right? That decision may be right for one child and not right for the next. And I don't know if it's right. And it scares the shit out of me that I don't know that it's right. And I'm nervous about it. And I don't know the implications of everything, but I'm doing the best I can, and here's my framework for that decision. And so, I tend to write down all of those things so that one day they'll read those and they will understand with a different perspective, because they'll be then in their 20s or their 40s or whenever, and they'll be parents on their own and read that and go, wow, now I can really appreciate, hopefully they can read that and have some appreciation for where we were as parents. And certainly there's things that they'll say or do that I learn from and that just blow me away. And I'll write those things in there too, because I want that, when I talk to people about journaling to their kids, number one, I think it's always important that you share with your children these things. You don't just hide them away and you share them, and you write a few of them down so that later they can reread those and go, wow. Like my daughter's I've gifted her journals now when she graduated high school. And she's, she'll read these stories and kind of call me up like, oh my God, I forgot all about this. And that's so cool. So
yeah. Well, and we do have such a lucky perspective, right? Because like a child's memory is only so formed, right? Up until like really early like teenage years. And even then, like, experiences get lost in the shuffle, right, of growing up. And so the perspective that we can share of like those sweet moments in their life, or the really, highlight moments or experiences, or the funny things they said, like they don't have a mechanism for remembering that if we aren't keeping it.
Even us, I mean, there's so much information coming at us every moment right now. And so even for me, if you ask me something that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, there's a good chance I'm gonna be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because I just won't remember. And so, this kind of process, you're not gonna, and look, this is not where you write down every detail of your life, because then it becomes
Right.
noise as well. But
Yes.
just to write down once a week, once a month, a little
Yeah.
story that meant something to you, an event that meant something to you, I promise you it will change your life.
Yeah. And the thing that really resonates for me is a word you used when describing this process, but to slow down and to have some awareness and some presence. Like those three words to me, like really stand out as one of the main benefits of even deciding to do something like this, like to opt into presence once a week. For a lot of people, that's new. That is a new experience to say, I'm going to show up all the way. I'm going to pay attention to what's happening in my home or in conversation. And I'm going to be present enough that I can write it down, or I can say what my perspective was. Like that's just, oh, what a number one, what a gift. Because when you're in presence in the moment, like, yes, you're not going to say to your child, hey, by the way, I'm really showing up right now. I'm here.
But they'll know.
But they'll
They will know.
know. They will know. And what a just like loving action it really is to be in that space. I'd be so interested to hear though, like what your perspective on that is.
Look, even today, as a parent, as a business owner, as a parent, as you put all entrepreneur, you put all this together, it's easy to get distracted and not be fully present with your spouse, with your children. I mean, often like Amber and I'll be talking, I'm like, will you quit looking at your phone?
Yeah.
And she probably does the same to me. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, we all want and seek presence. So I think it's so important right there. And, but the awareness is really like, if you don't have awareness of something, then you're never going to fix it. Someone told me the other day, they're like, I'm on an accountability thread for fitness with some people. And, just the fact that they had awareness of where they are right now, that's step one.
Absolutely.
Step one right there. And so I think it's really, really important. And, as we go through and start doing something, following a process, getting in a habit of, okay, just once a week, I'm going to find a couple of photos from the past week on something that was cool that happened and just write 2 or 3 sentences about that. Just that little awareness right there starts to really move the needle for people. And it starts to get people really just engaged in appreciating the little moments of life that happen, because they go too fast.
Yeah, they go so fast. And and they're the harder memories to collect, I would say. Like in when I think like distance, when I think far to the future, right? And sometimes the good stuff is harder for us to remember or to attach a memory to, unless it's like really blissful and big. And so the opportunity to just remember it like in real time, like that. I mean, how often have you said like those little moments, those are life, like that is life. And so the chance to show up for those and remember those in a meaningful way is really remarkable and powerful.
And you mentioned, the funny things your kids say. Oh my goodness. Like that, I really try to slow down and write down some of those funny things. I forget them often. And I'm like, oh, I just want to share that. Or the witty things. Sometimes they'll say the smartest, wittiest things. I'm like, how old are you? You're 5.
I know. It's remarkable. I know. Oh, yeah. My kids are way funnier than I am. I'm like, darn it all. Like, where did you guys get this humor from? I wish I had the capacity to do this on the fly like you do.
100%.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
I love it, Ken. Where can people find more about the work that you're doing and the Legacy Journal app and all the good stuff?
Yeah. So legacyjournal.app. So we are an app. So legacyjournal.app. Please go check that out. Tell all about who we are, what we're about, and kind of how it works. You can find the app on the Apple App Store and on the Google Play Store. It's on both of those places. So go find it. It's a freemium product. So you can download it for free. You can use it for free forever if you choose. If you want to unlock all of the features, we have a premium plan in it. And it's I think it's $69 a year or $749 a month right there. However, whenever you download it, you get automatically 14 days. Everything's unlocked for free. So you can test it out, try it, and see what works for you. So please go check that out. You can learn about our laundromat that really makes a difference. It's laundryloveluv.com. So laundryluv.com. We have one store open right now, one more under construction, and we're closing our building tomorrow for the third one right there. And then we'll open up a fourth one after that. So
wow.
We're going on that. I am on social media. I have social media accounts. I'm not on there often, but I do have a Facebook, an Instagram, and a LinkedIn and a Twitter account. So you can and most of those are either at KFW or at Ken Wimberly or at Ken.Wimberly. So it's along those lines.
Okay. We will make sure to link all those things in the show notes.
I'll send you show notes on everything.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Ken, for having this conversation and kind of sharing the trajectory of like connecting to this purposeful action and the place that you are now. I think it's really inspirational for people to hear what's possible, like when you do start doing the work, right? And we all get to decide at some point when we're ready, like we have that aha moment where the kid says the thing and it sends us on a whole new path forward, or, that shows up in a lot of ways. But it's really inspirational to hear your story and how your path just continues to unfold just by taking some action, over the last handful of years. It's really awesome.
Oh, thank you. And I love the work you're doing. And boy, your comment right there is so dead on that it doesn't take a lot of time to make monumental changes. And when I say a lot of time, it takes an investment of some time, but within 6 months, you can start to see massive results in your life. Within a year, it's really big. Gary Keller made a comment one time that I was like, whoa, he said, we tend to, he's been a mentor of mine for a while. He's just a very brilliant guy, but he made a comment. He said, we tend to dramatically overestimate what we can accomplish in a year. He said, however, the flip side of that is we way dramatically underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years. And so, I've found that to be true in my life when I've looked at like goals for the year and what I accomplished in that year. I'm like, wow, I thought I was going to do more. But then I'll go back 3 years later and look back. I'm like, whoa, look at everything that I've done right here. So
that makes so much sense from like a neuro perspective too, because our brain to rewire takes about 6 to 8 months of like a new pattern to have the wiring present. And so that really makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, in a year, it's going to have taken that whole year really to have the new pattern start to show up. But man, then that pattern's locked and loaded, and like from there, it's wild.
And there's the compound effect, right? There's like the compound effect that says I'm doing these things over and over, or I'm making the calls, or I'm whatever it is that you're doing right there. They compound on over each other. And then what was hard gets easy. And then success just starts showing up.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ken. It's really been a pleasure to talk to you, and thank everyone for their time to check in and hang out with us on the podcast for a little bit. And we'll catch you guys all next time. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Cole. Appreciate it.